welcome to the Wellness Nurse. I'm really excited about this podcast today because I've been learning all about the power of social connection and the benefits that social connection has for our health and longevity. So if you are hesitating at going out, networking, by the end of this conversation, you are going to be ready and prepared to go and network like a trooper. So today I've got Kirsty Fields here with me. She's the creative director of Social Ocean, where she specialises in uncovering creative business opportunities through events and social platforms to drive engagement, growth, and lead generation. With over 15 years of experience in leveraging social media, Kirsty has built and managed platforms with tens and thousands of followers. My dream, just quietly, including celebrity accounts, while training and mentoring business owners and staff in effective digital strategies. Beyond social media, Kirsty's extensive 25-year career in events includes work with state and local government projects, community initiatives, and hundreds of corporate events, showcasing her detailed and innovative approach to event marketing. Also, Kirsty is the founder of a business networking group and the creator of Ladies Who Long Lunch, a series of events dedicated to promoting connection and self-care among businesswomen. So welcome, Kirsty. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for asking me to be here.
So business relationships and networking connections are instrumental in business success. However, you discovered that there is a need for deeper connection amongst business owners and professionals. What have you observed amongst the business community around isolation and our need for social connection?
I think depending on the type of business that you're in, I work with a lot of small and micro business owners. So a lot of us have work from home offices, which means we're geographically departed every day. And it's also causing a little bit more of an issue with the comfort level of also being at home and doing business. So there's a lot of us at the moment that are actually just staying at home. It was unlike a lot of people who had to transition to work from home from their workplace, and that was really new for them. Business owners have been doing this for a lot longer than just the last few years. So that social isolation it existed before 2020 for a lot of us. So I think for those of us who had already been experiencing that was then elevated at a different level because it was our social interactions with others that were taken away. We were already used to being at home and staying at home, so we're really good at that part. But it was those opportunities where we actually were socializing outside our working hours. So that's definitely something that I've felt from just myself personally, but also with my clients. And I think also there's a little bit of, when you work, like I come with it from an education family, and when they get together, they all talk about education, and anyone who's standing around in that circle conversation kind of can't talk to it. I think business owners are the same. When we come together, we talk about business, but those around us can't talk to it. And so when we're at home and we're only with our family members ongoing, our family members can't talk to it a lot of the time unless it's a family business. So there's a lot of separation that is a really commonality issue industry to industry. But when you're a business owner and also working in a very small team or a team of one, that's really amplified. And I think also in a digital sense, the last few years we've been very digitally overwhelmed, and initially we needed that because it was the only way we could connect with people. But now that we don't have to rely on that digital connection, I think there's probably a lot of us kind of staying away from anything digital because we're still recovering from that. And so we've ditched the digital, but we're still getting used to emerging back out into social connection. So I think at the moment we're in this like grey space of saying yes to some things because we know that we've missed it and we need it, but still saying no because we're still getting used to the new us, if you like.
Yeah, as you say, we're still getting used to the face-to-face connections again. How would you recommend that we build those relationships when we do have those face-to-face meetings?
It depends on the situation, obviously, because sometimes we've said yes and we are going out to events, but there's not an opportunity in all of those situations where we could chat with someone that we haven't met before, or we might actually head to someone, we recognize someone in the crowd, and stay in our safe space and just head for that one person, or we don't broaden our horizons, as you like. So I guess in some cases I'd have to say, if you're not comfortable with approaching a stranger, might have to put on our brave face, and literally have a go. And the other thing, I suppose, is find out if the place where you're going to, or the event that you're attending, has some kind of networking opportunity or a social aspect where this allows you to be in a room with other people who are also potentially standing around awkwardly, so you can be awkward and in comfort with everybody else. But I would say there's probably a level of bravery around identifying someone who is maybe also standing on their own, and going and actually walking up to that person because you've already observed that they're alone like you are. So that's a good opportunity to make a new friend. I think those in numbers attract other people, so it's also a good way to kind of open yourself up and welcome other people into that small group too. But yeah, it definitely does depend on the circumstance. Like, a lot of corporate activities that we might go to, they sway one way or the other. They're either very social or they're very structured. Sometimes there's not a happy medium, but that's also
Mm,
finding the type of event that might just suit what your need is at the time, and include more of those into
mm.
the yes box. So I'm gonna seek those out and head to those a little bit more.
I heard something recently, and it was about where is the best spot to stand when you turn up to a networking event and you're on your own. And some people make the mistake of just trying to meet somebody at the door, but everybody's sort of getting their lanyards sorted and, getting a drink, whatever. The best place to stand apparently is just near the bar, so that when people get their drink and they turn around and face the room, there you are, and you save them from their moment of awkwardness. I thought, as a person who, I often turn up to events on my own and I don't like it, I don't find it easy, but I thought, okay, next time that's where I'll be.
Yeah, and I would say even before you get to the bar, like in the lineup for the bar, because a lot of places
True.
where you go, everyone's headed to the bar, and so there's a lineup. So just turn and talk to the person in front of you or behind you. Well, behind you, obviously, because if you turn, you've got a captured audience, because everyone wants to get to the bar just like you do. So in the bar line is another good one. And then
Perfect.
waiting for the drinks. There's everyone has got a shared goal here at that bar. So
Yeah.
even if you're not drinking alcohol, the bar is certainly, I haven't heard that
Mm,
explicitly myself, but I would have said, yeah, the bar is certainly the place to go, because everyone wants a refreshment of whatever kind it is. And the other thing that I would say is, if you've got like a table seating layout, that's the other place, because everyone's got to go to find themselves there. So you can kind of, and normally they have a bit of space around them as well. And everyone wants to know, oh, have you got someone that that you're sitting with? So that's another good place. Yeah.
that's a good idea. There's a lot of research coming out making some pretty strong statements about the benefits of social connection. A meta-analysis of 148 studies and over 300,000 people indicates that social isolation increases the risk of premature death by up to 50%. So the data are showing that social connection and healthy relationships are just as important as eating well and exercising. But just like eating well and moving more, there are lots of reasons why people find it hard to go out, connect socially, and build those healthy relationships. So what are some of the barriers that you've observed, and how can we overcome these obstacles to build great friendships?
Yeah, that was a really interesting statistic that you shared there. And I think immediately as I was listening to that, I was thinking, well, if you don't go out and have social connection, you can't you're not smiling. You're not feeling happy in another person's company. So I'm probably not too surprised to hear about that. But I think that one of the biggest objections for people to not go out or to stay home, as it were, is that we are comfortable at home. So when you receive an invite, as an example, there's so many decisions or so many things that you've got to do to prepare to go out. Unless your mate rang you up and asked for a coffee in half an hour, are you free? Where you just go, oh yes, you either you are or you're not. Yes, I can, or no, I can't. If you've got an invitation to attend something, then, what comes to my mind is, oh, well, am I free? So if you're not, then that's an easy no. But I think we're encouraged to say no because there's so many things we need to do. We need to organise what we're going to wear. How are we going to get there? Transport is the time it takes to get there. Do I have to stay there? Do I have the time or the commitment to make? So there's a lot of things in that capacity where, oh, that's too hard, or I don't have the appropriate dress for that, or I don't have any business cards yet because I'm very new to business. There's a lot of things where I am not prepared for, or I don't have. They're just a very natural and easy objection for someone to create for themselves, instead of saying yes and committing to say yes and then actually go. Because I think there's a lot of, I wouldn't call it a trend because I don't know there's data around it, but I think that what a lot of people have started to do is that they won't say yes until the death. So they're umming and ahhing and can I, will I, do I want to, is it too hard? I'm coming up with all the things that make it hard in my mind, and I just not sure if I can say yes. And so the decision-making process in someone actually making a commitment to go somewhere in the last few years is really kind of taking a long, long time. And if you've got a long lead time on your invitation, unless you've got a hard and fast RSVP like a wedding who needs to know your RSVP a couple of months, then the actual ability for you to change your mind exists. Even if you bought a ticket, you can still decide to not go if you're not comfortable on the day or the day before, or something else popped up and I didn't really want to go. So all these objections still exist in our mind. We're just creating barriers for ourselves because home is our comfort zone. And I understand it. I have a home office, so I spend a lot of time here. It's very comfortable for me. I've made my home comfortable, but going out isn't. So I've got a lot of things in place to make it easier for me, not because I might say no in all circumstances, although I admit I am the person who'll say no if it's, on my weekend or in my private time and it's something that's work related. Specifically, I'll really find myself saying no in that capacity. But yeah, there's things that I put in place to help me say yes as well, and keep my yes at a yes, so that I have the enjoyment of that social interaction and connection when I'm out. Yeah.
I feel like you've been in my head, and in fact, I don't have to look very far back, but that it's that leaving things as long as you can before you have to commit. You don't know, you're in two minds. You've got to go out, but you love being at home as well. What I'm hearing is planning and making the commitment as early as you can really is helpful to combating those objections that we come up with in our mind. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think just for me, I am a planner, and I like to find details and things and give myself the details. That helps me become a yes person more often. I like the actual long range planning because that's in my nature. As an example, this month I've got so many events on. It's absolutely not funny. So they're all in my diary. I know that I'm really scheduled through to my eyeballs. And so what do I need to do in the lead up from between events to give myself that level of comfort and de-stress? So I will, as an example, being a woman, when I go outside, how I look is important to me. I know that I shouldn't go out in my pajamas. And so what does that mean that I need to do to make sure I put shoes on and not my thongs that I wear around the house, all those things. So I'll actually outfit plan. I think for women, this is a really good tip to have. When something comes on my diary, I'll go to my wardrobe and I'll look at what are the appropriate outfits. I admit I've got a lot of clothes. I've got a lot of selection, but I'll think about who it is that might be there that I might know or the type of audience that will be there so that I'm dressing appropriate. And I'll know that by shopping my wardrobe for a start, I'm going to find something in there. I don't need to buy anything new ever, but I think I don't have the appropriate outfit is a really rather easy objection for women when they probably shouldn't have that as an objection. So shopping my wardrobe and planning my outfits is really important in terms of the day before. So I run a local business networking group. We have morning breakfast. I've got to be there to start, at 7:15 for a 7:30 start. I'm not a morning person, so there's no way that I could actually get up and get myself out the door fast enough if I didn't plan. So even I maybe not choose those outfits weeks in advance because I do that regularly. But the night before I go to bed, I literally have my entire outfit hanging up in the bathroom, ready to go when I wake up. That thought process and the objection of saying, I don't feel like it, I'm going to go back to bed, disappeared. Now, unlike a lot of other people, I'm running that event with my colleague, Leanne. We don't have a choice. We have to be there because it's our group. But for everybody else's event that I want to go to, I have the exact same process in place because that's just a decision that will stop me from walking out the door. Is like, I don't know what to wear, despite the fact that I know I've got a huge wardrobe. The other thing is things like that where you're going to a corporate, a professional event. Well, I can pack my bag or my box or my handbag or my briefcase with all the things that I need and have that by the door ready to go, or put it in the car even. If I've got big events and all that stuff can go in the car, if you've got a secure place for your car to be overnight, that's super helpful. And then quite literally you can have an easy, relaxing time before you need to leave. And if the event is later in the day, probably my biggest problem that I need to cater for is when I'm maybe not 100% committed, I need to make sure that I've got the time allocated on my diary. It's one of the things I've become quite good at over the years, and it's the reason why I like to have lots of notice over an event, is the time is on my diary, but I would actually stop myself from putting things immediately before, going out to an event later in the day. And I might even try to avoid putting anything on that day. So I've kind of got free time and catch up time on other little jobs where it's not something that's dedicated time. And the reason why I do that is because if I'm not 100% committed, anything that could pop up during that day becomes something that could be my new immediate priority when I'm looking for a reason to procrastinate. So that's just something else that I do. When it's my own event, I would have, a couple of days in advance to help me plan and put all these things together. And I wouldn't put any appointments on for myself. But that's, as an event planner, it's, we're talking about something very different there. But yeah, so those are the things that help me stay committed, and help me plan and reduce the objections that I would personally come up with. Someone else who's got other objections, for other reasons, I would say have a look at what those objections are and see what your workarounds are for you so that you can stay committed to getting out and getting that social interaction.
Well, I'm thinking you've just said that you are not a morning person, and yet you can turn up looking $1 million at 7:15 or ready to go when we all arrive. So if anybody's out there thinking, well, they've got a handful of objections, I think you've just ticked them all off. Schedule it in, plan it, get your outfit ready the night before, and you're going. Just remove that factor of will I, won't I? There's the outfit, put it on, do your hair, go.
That's an easy one for women, isn't that? That whole outfit situation. But I think whatever your objection is, you can really get down to what it is, and work through that for yourself. You've just got to be open with yourself.
As someone who facilitates networking and connection, have you noticed anything different in the way that men connect?
I think probably my biggest observation is that they kind of lean into two very different types of events in a professional space that they might turn up for. One will be very social. It's kind of why golf days exist and sportsmen's lunches. They're very social and they are really primarily based around drinking, actually. And then there's a really structured type of event, which is very corporate, almost, sales driven. And, they've got a different style of communication and conversation between themselves. I'm not a man. I can't talk to it 100%. But certainly it is a bit harder to get, men along to certain types of events unless they swing either one of those ways. And as someone who's coordinated a lot of golf days, even the components that I need to build into a golf day to make sure that the golf team comes along is really important. Even when it's like a rewards day, it's not even something that costs them to attend. There's still going to be a lot of high social, attractive activities within that day. And in a corporate sense, they'll be less likely to, they'll come up with their different objections unless they're able to interact with their peers in a certain way. I think, there's different types of networking groups that exist that really are structured and targeted towards men, and they exist for that purpose. My own business networking group is less structured like that. It's more welcoming. There's a lot of things within a structured networking group that are scary for people. And so, that's not natural, not a natural component for me to build into an event. But if your audience is strongly men, you really need to think about what it is that attracts them, depending on what activity it is you want to run. So yeah, they're highly professional or they're highly social. They're kind of, there's no real midway point, to be honest.
Yeah, it's interesting because social connection is just so important for men, and sometimes, they can find themselves without actually having those deep friendships. So it's interesting that you sort of acknowledge that they go to events specifically for either social reasons or business, but they find it more difficult to come together, to combine those two aspects of connection. One of the things that I love about what you do, Kirsty, and I think it's one of the greatest life hacks there is to combine this social connection with business. So you sort of indicated that if it's your private time, if it's the weekend, you might be more likely to say no, but you get that social connection with your business colleagues and friends there.
Yeah, the program behind Ladies Who Long Lunch is a real hybrid collection of different program elements to relate to a broader professional audience, but has really strong streams of socializing, coming together around good food. We were talking earlier with that study around it's really important to eat well. We also have components of education in the day and an empowerment by listening to fantastic speakers, but all the way throughout an event is opportunities to have conversation and meet new people and get up, go to the bar. Sometimes we have to go to the bar depending on our food and beverage service. So we've got those interaction points in the lineup, with someone else maybe around the room as well. But we have, a lot of stuff that are very engaging, like having a media wall where you can stand and pose and have photos taken and, meet your mate near the media wall. That's another good spot actually at an event to stand near. There's always a crowd there. We've built out these different components so that if you're really interested in a guest speaker, well, then you'll be drawn to the guest speaker. If you're like me, who works from home and has, a strong history of attending business networking events, well, then that might be hugely educational but not very social, and I'm looking for social stuff. Now I'm running an event, so on a technicality, I'm still working at that event throughout that 3-4 hour period. But even at the end of the day, we've created a process for ourselves where we pack up hurriedly and empty out what we need so that we can actually join our guests as soon as we possibly can, and then start our relaxation point at a time when our ladies are still hanging around, and we move into space. We actually call it cocktail networking hour, which is really 2 hours. It's not even 1 hour. It doesn't mean you need to be drinking cocktails, but that's just what we've nicknamed that portion of our program. And people are staying for an extra couple of hours past the actual event so that they can continue those conversations with, a new person that they met, or, the people that they were sat around. And the other thing that we do, we have a lot of individual people who come to an event on their own. So they buy a single ticket. We built something into our ticketing platform to ask someone if they have someone that they know who's attending their event that they would like to sit with. So, Ros, if you get your ticket, you know that I'm coming, you could put my name down, you'd like to sit with me. But there are plenty of people that don't have a name to put down. They just, the individual ticket, they don't know anyone. And so we will plant those people as you like. We have allocated seating. We'll plant them around the room with our personal connections that we know that will take that person under their wing as someone who doesn't know anyone else there. And the likelihood is that they'll make new friends is extremely increased for that individual. So there's things that we're building into that space to have education, empowerment, social connection, friendship opportunities, as well as all that you would get from business networking opportunity, like collaboration opportunities or mentoring or menteeing. So there's a lot of stuff built into that time, but that's done by our program design and adding all these different elements throughout a day, and then we just throw buckets of fun on top of that.
It's so intentional what you're doing. You are intentionally fostering these connections through great planning and, as you say, layering it just with a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, and probably our centered point, and the program itself is actually built around food. So, which is what it was the other thing around that study around, we really need to eat better and we need to move more. When you are seated and enjoying food with people around you, there's this subliminal thing around being comfortable sitting around the table, as obviously in this circumstance, we're not with family, but eating food around the table is a bit of a lost art. We eat on the lounge far too much now, particularly when your kids grow up and move out. There's no dining table conversation
Yes,
anymore.
guilty.
Yeah, me too. And so sitting at a table and sharing food brings this level of comfort and familiarity. And so we'll almost always have 2 courses. Sometimes we're lucky enough to have 3 courses, depending on where we are. And outside the city is a lot cheaper hospitality wise. Inside the city, sometimes we can only give one meal. That sharing and sense of sharing is extremely important to the individual's comfort level, whether you know the people around you or not.
You talk about comfort and familiarity around the dining table, which I love. What about for those people who have social anxiety? Have you got any small steps that you can recommend to start building their network?
I think there's a couple of things. If you're experiencing social anxiety, then that's going to be something that affects you every day. And so in a perhaps a less business sense, trying to find an activity that meets your own interests, I think, is important. I talk about, going out in activities in a business environment because that's what I do and what I'm interested in. But on a personal level, there are so many different things available in everybody's community that we just don't know about. So I would suggest asking, a neighbor or a peer or a family member or a friend, be that, on the phone or Facebook Messenger, as an example, or texting our friends on the phone. Do you know of any events that exist for this or that are targeting that type of interest? Because if you are actually interested in what that group or activity is doing, you'll be more inclined to ignore perhaps some of your normal objections. And if you don't have anyone to ask, I think this is the really fantastic part of social media. With Facebook groups in particular, you can ask a question in your community group, and there are very willing community members in every group willing to throw suggestions at you for any question that you have. So that's a great resource. You'll also find suggestions of people who are actually involved in those activities that you might be interested in. And of course, just because someone suggested something to you doesn't mean you need to take it up. You're just seeking the suggestions. But if something sounds really interesting to you, and you can go looking for some more information, obviously, and if you can't, I would actually suggest, if you can, to call the coordinator or email them if you're more comfortable, or message their Facebook page and actually ask questions around the program of the activity or the event. Because I think that we experience anxiety at a different level because of the unknown. And so if we find out some facts and actually understand more about that activity, then a lot of our concerns can be allayed, basically, because we're imagining some of those things ourselves and we have anxiety around what we don't know a lot more than what we do know. So if you get to the facts around what that activity is and find out if it does sound like you, then that will help you mentally and physically prepare to attend and join in. And of course, these things aren't they're not, volunteer community organisations. Church has many community groups within the church environment that aren't religious based as well. There's just churches have a big space and community groups are attracted to their space. So even ringing your local church and asking what community groups meet at that church is another really good way of finding out, or finding some activities that you might be interested in that operate on a small scale. So they'll be less overwhelming for you for those people who don't want to be in a big crowd, for example. Yeah.
I think there some very practical tips you've just given us. So what I'm hearing is find something that you're interested in. You're more likely to be involved, and more likely to want to be involved. Get in touch with the coordinator ahead of time. Find out what the format is of the activity. And by doing so, you remove that uncertainty, and that can help in itself to alleviate some of the anxiety. And join maybe Facebook groups, and you could even observe on Facebook groups for a little while before you actually attend an event too. So I think really, really practical tips.
Yeah,
Thanks, Kirsty.
I think if I'm talking to someone who is the coordinator of said activity or community group, this is where providing social proof via social media about what it is that you do is extremely helpful. When I speak to our community elders, they talk about, oh yes, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Facebook so that I can see what my grandchildren are doing, but they never interact. They never comment. There are those people who do obviously interact, but many of them don't. My mother-in-law goes to search my Facebook account and just see what I'm up to with her son, because I'm sharing what I'm doing and what we are doing more than he would. So she goes and looks for me, but she wouldn't comment in all circumstances or but when I talk to her on the phone, she goes, oh yes, I see you did this. Well, if we apply that level of social proof for a community organisation, particularly volunteer organisations, to get that level of activity onto social media is extremely helpful for those people who would never interact but are trying to find information for themselves or for their friends or family.
So just touching on that, you're involved in a number of volunteering events. Can you share a story from one of your volunteering events that shows what human connection can mean to someone's overall well-being?
Yeah, I think probably the one that's had a lot of impact on me in the last 12 months has been a local Christmas Day community lunch. I had the privilege of being the event manager for that lunch, and we brought together so many volunteers. So it's affected me in two different ways. Firstly, the level of interest from community members wanting to help and wanting to know what way they could help and could they commit a certain amount of time, be it a little bit of time in the lead up or before the event started, or even after the event, because they couldn't come earlier in the day because they did have family plans or whatnot. I literally booked out the number of volunteer roles that I had. I had so many people helping on that day that I had a long list of things that needed to be done, and they just got checked off in like half an hour instead of the 2-hour space that I had allocated, just down to the number of people who were there to help others who weren't as privileged or, as happy as they would be, at home with their family plans. And that was really moving to me. And it was almost hard actually to say to people, look, we've just got so many people, we don't need any more help. But when working with the different community groups involved in the day, something that I learnt along the way that perhaps I hadn't thought of is that interest level in volunteering on Christmas Day also comes from those who don't have their own plans on Christmas Day. And so there's two things, because someone asking to volunteer may not think that they are in a position of need themselves to actually just come along and attend an event like that as a guest. And so I would say to you, if you're at a loose end on Christmas Day, you could actually attend these events as a guest with ease, and you can find out if you can do that. And if you want to ask for in what way can you help, but also attend the day, just express that with your inquiry, because someone who is like me as an event manager, and I didn't have perhaps as good a level of awareness myself, is that I should have said to some of those people, don't worry about volunteering. We'd love you to come along and enjoy lunch with us if you don't have plans. So I needed to teach myself that I needed to say, oh, do you have plans on Christmas Day? To actually identify that this person was in need of attending our lunch with us, but they thought that that wasn't for them. They actually thought that they should be a volunteer, not that they
Mm.
needed that lunch. And the other thing is, if you're a person who doesn't have family or friends plans and doesn't have, an opportunity to volunteer close by to them, and if you don't have transport to get to somewhere else a little bit further afield, is to ask your family or friends or neighbours, like, what are their plans for Christmas Day in the time leading up to Christmas Day? Because I think that for those of us who do regularly have family plans, we're just busy planning away our family plans, and we never ask, oh, what are you doing on Christmas Day? And someone says, I don't have plans. Well, someone who says, oh, I don't have plans, the next question you should ask is, do you want to join us? I've had plenty of Christmases over the time that had extended families, friends who were visiting them. They were not a family member necessarily. They were a neighbour, or a neighbour's friend was visiting them. Invite them into your space if you have the capacity. And then the other thing is, invite the other people that you say don't have plans when you also don't, to come to you, or organise to meet in the local park and have your own gathering and bring your own lunch, or bring a plate. Just because the advertising says on Christmas Day we should have a big plump turkey doesn't mean we need to have expensive meats on Christmas Day. We can all pack our own sandwich and bring our own picnic lunch to the park and enjoy Christmas Day together. So, if you're having conversations with others who don't have plans, and you are also in that boat, why don't you just meet together and, on the got 2 parks within about 3 or 4 blocks of my house. So there's easy locations for my neighbourhood, if my friends or family or neighbourhood needed it. So I think that's another way of being aware in our conversations leading up, and maybe just prompt another couple of questions to those people you're talking to find out, do they actually have plans, and maybe could you invite them into your world despite the fact they're not a family member. Christmas isn't around family only. I think that's the special thing about Christmas spirit. That Christmas volunteering lunch has really affected me in other areas of my work. It's impacted me in different ways. 10 months on, I still think about that. And the other thing around that Christmas lunch too was seeing the pure joy on little kids' faces who I think really didn't have a gift or many gifts at home, and they certainly didn't have the gift of food and community around them at home. And so that community lunch, one of the things I took away was those stories of little kids' faces smiling, and elation around entertainment from Santa and singing Christmas carols and all sorts of things like that. But yeah, there's some other things there on Christmas Day as a follow-on that I think would be really helpful for those people who don't have a volunteering opportunity too. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the lead up to Christmas can be a time, it's varied, isn't it? So for some people, it's just a reminder that they are alone. And I think that's very practical to approach an organisation where you can volunteer, or indeed, just attend as a guest. How would people find those events? I guess they just Google volunteering lunch at Christmas, or...
Yeah, well, certainly one way is to Google Christmas Day lunch or Christmas Day volunteering. But I know that a lot of the people found our Christmas Day lunch by the community Facebook pages. There was so many Facebook groups where our Facebook event was tagged onto those community groups. So people who did know about it, or who perhaps were already signed up to volunteer, were sharing that information as an opportunity with many other Facebook community events. And I remember that it was probably about 3 or 4 community members that would then go to the event and, tag a name there for that person to find the space of information. In the process of planning that event, I was looking at what other Christmas Day opportunities existed. And we started planning that day, back in October. So, 2-3 months out, which was great. But some events don't pop up until closer to the time. So it would be something you could start seeking out. The other thing is, keep an eye out on your local news for this type of things. Church groups and places that are already doing or providing services for the homeless in your area, they're the organisations where you could just look up and see if they've got information to share about that. But a little bit of practical Googling and your Facebook groups online, they're just a wealth of community information for regardless of what it is that you want to know. That's the place to go. I think, as I said before, a lot of volunteer-led organisations don't have the most fantastic communication points, hence why we, rely on our community neighbours to help share that good information.
Okay. So there's so much practicality in all of this. I just love it. So if you're out there, you're sitting on your couch, you're feeling alone, there go 100 excuses is what I'm thinking. I'm going to summarize everything that Kirsty has suggested into a blog, and you will be able to find it at roslindsey.com. Kirsty, if there's anybody in the local Brisbane area or Redcliffe Peninsula area, when's the next event for Ladies Who Long Lunch?
The next event is on Friday, the 1st of November. It's our end of year celebration. So it's a little bit different. It's not technically a long lunch, but our next diary to save the date is Friday, the 7th of March for International Women's Day, and it'll be at the Victoria Park complex in the Marquee at Hurston. So that's our next long lunch format during the day on a Friday, and you can literally go to your diary and bank out the whole day, get a little bit of self-care in there as well. I think that's a really important thing to do. Put it on the diary.
Fantastic. There you go. From now, so we're planning, we're scheduling, it's locked in. There's no objections. We're going. Okay.
I've got it ready already.
That's it. I love it. Kirsty, thank you so much. It's just been a pleasure chatting to you about all things social connection. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thanks, Ros.